Hi, I'm Bob, author of Become a Photoshop Expert in a Day by Mastering Layers. Adobe recently released a new Photoshop tool I'm excited to show you. It's called the Adjustment Brush, and it lets you use a brush to apply adjustments from the Adjustments panel. Well, what's the point of this? Until now, if you wanted to apply adjustments from the Adjustments panel selectively to an area, you'd have to create a layer mask or a new layer with a mask, flood it with white or flood it with black, then attach an adjustment layer to the mask. This new brush does all of that for you. It also uses Adobe's AI to help you select the area to brush. This is so cool. Let's take a look. I want to make some adjustments to the tip of my kayak without changing anything else in the image. So on the left, I'm going to go and grab the adjustments brush. Now, if you don't see that adjustments brush there, it just means that you have an older version of Photoshop. You can try updating it in Creative Cloud. So I'll bring my brush over here. Now, if the brush is too big, I can make it smaller by hitting the left square bracket key on the keyboard. If it's too small, I can hit the right square bracket to make it a little bigger. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to press Command plus on the Mac or Control plus in Windows. And the adjustment that I want to use is brightness and contrast. And you see, I already have it picked up here on this floating bar. If not, if it's something else, I could just hit that drop down and take it. Notice it's also up here on the standard bar. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm just going to start by brushing over the kayak. And you see, I'm not being really all that careful that I'm not covering the water. That's not a problem. See, I've got this pocket knife with a blue lanyard. I'm not worried about that. I've got the reading glasses and the yellow lanyard there. Yes, I look at my phone when I'm paddling on my kayak. I admit it. That's not so bad, and that looks totally fine. And I'm done. I'm going to let go of the mouse pointer. Now look what's happened. Over in the Layers panel, it created this adjustment layer, and there is that layer mask. So it's non-destructive, meaning that I can turn off that eyeball to hide it. So there's the before, turn it back on, there's the after. Now, what about those areas that maybe I brushed on a little too much? If you take a look up here on the status bar, you see that overlay there? I'm going to click that, I'm going to turn that on, and now it shows me exactly where that is. Now, if I decide that, I want to clean this up a little bit, I want to get rid of that overlay that's over the water, you see up here I've been using the brush with the plus. I'm going to click the brush with the minus, and I can just wipe that off, maybe use a smaller brush there, and I can remove that. And that's really not a big deal because it didn't affect the water anyway. And if I want to get rid of the overlay that's on my glasses in this yellow lanyard, I can do it, but you saw the brush wasn't really doing much to that. And the same thing here for the pocket knife. And I'm going to turn the overlay off, and we can see that. Now, I want to put another adjustment on, and I kind of have a choice. Do I want to replace brightness and contrast with a different adjustment, or do I want to add a second adjustment? And here's the deal. Here's how we make that choice. If I leave this selected, and I go up here, and I choose a different adjustment, that is going to replace what that is. I don't want to do that right now. I actually want both. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to put my mouse pointer on that little sun icon there, and I'm going to drag onto the plus on the bottom of that Layers panel. So now I've duplicated it. So I can leave this visible or not. I think what I'll do for now is I'm just going to hide that eyeball, and I'm going to click on the layer mask. Notice I'm clicking on the layer mask and not on the little sunshine. If I click on that little sunshine symbol, you notice that bar goes away. I have to make sure that I'm on that layer mask. So now I want to change the color. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to choose Hue and Saturation. For now, let's ignore these little dots. I'm using the beta version of Photoshop. So depending on when you view this video, you may or may not see those. But now that I already have the mask, I can go and drag this around to get a different color. Now, I dragged it over here and I got this purplish, but you notice some of that red of the original kayak is showing through. So I'm just going to make the brush a little bigger, and I'm going to make sure to get the plus brush. And now I can paint over those spots that are showing through. And now I can take that hue and I can, now all of a sudden I have a blue kayak. I can change the saturation. I can make it heavy saturation or low saturation, even kind of bring it to black and white. If I want to have a black and white kayak on a colorful canal, I can do that. And I can make any of these changes, change the lightness if I want it brighter or darker. Notice if I make it very bright, then you see that overlay that's on the water. A little trick here, if I want to bring this back to the default, this little triangle, if I double click it, it brings it back to the starting point. I want to show you another way that you could select the object. So again, I'm going to disable that eyeball. I'm going to click on the background layer, and I still have the adjustment brush, but you see on the status bar up here, taskbar, I've got this little button there. That is the object selection tool. So it's just like the object selection tool that's in Photoshop Creative Cloud, but this is built into this adjustment brush. So I'm going to click that. And you notice the mouse pointer is now this crosshair. And when I bring it, let's say on the trees get selected. If I bring it on the water gets selected. And if I click it on the kayak, look at that. It's the kayak that gets selected. So I could select that with a single click. And look what's happening here in the layers panel. It's doing that right there. And now that's hue and saturation. So if I want to continue with that, just so you could see the difference from before, I'm doing that. And also you notice that because that did a much better job of selecting than the brush did, I didn't have to worry about all of this stuff that I have stacked on there getting changed because those didn't get selected in the first place. And now if maybe I want a different one, I want a different adjustment, maybe I'll go and choose levels. I love using levels in general. So here I can make an adjustment to the levels if I wanted this kayak just to be brighter or darker, if I want to change the contrast, something like that. And notice it's tagged there as levels. And if I want to see the others, let's rearrange the space there. So I could now turn on hue and saturation. I could turn on brightness and color, and I can make any change. If I decide, oh, maybe I don't want that blue, I want something else, I could go back to that hue and saturation. As soon as I click that, as soon as I click the layer mask in the layers panel, it brings me back here, and now I could go to town changing the colors all over again. Maybe I want a bright green color for this week's adventure. Let me show you one other way of selecting. So I have this other file open called Railroad Bridge. Now, selecting the railroad bridge out of everything else is going to be a little difficult because we've got some of these tree branches in the way. And it's kind of the same color amount, same lightness as the stonework there. So I'm going to go back to the object selection. But the thing is, look what happens. When I roll over it, nothing much happens. It's great selecting the trees. It's great selecting the water, but really not the bridge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cursor up here, and I'm going to make a marquee selection. So I'm going to marquee select the bridge. And you see I'm even going into the trees a little bit. And this is where the AI comes into place. It waits a moment. There it is. How do I know it's selected? Well, remember we have overlay. So I'm going to click that overlay, turn that on. Hey, look at that. It's selected it. So now I can turn that off. And this just happens to be hue and saturation. So I could do that. But, I think I want levels for this. I don't want to change the color. So I'm going to go up to levels. And look at that. You can see really what's happening there in that levels panel, so that I can bring out and we can see really the texture that's happening in that bridge. But wait, we're not done yet, because look what's happening downstream. We have another bridge. I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit. So I want this auto bridge to be another selection. I don't want to replace what I did on the railroad bridge. So I need to make sure that it's the background layer that's active. So now I'm going to make another selection. So I still have the object selection tool. I'm going to drag across this smaller bridge, and it gives me another adjustment layer. Now you notice that there's nothing really visible there. And I'm not sure if this is a bug or if it's just that this is a very small part of a large image and there just isn't a way to display that. But here's how we can find out is up here. I'm going to turn on overlay so I can see, yeah, hey, it grabbed it. So even though I don't see it in the layer mask, the overlay shows me what's going on. And look what's happening in this levels. Boy, see, it's so bright because the sun was just hitting that. So now I can adjust it so that it looks normal and not washed out. And now you can see the railings and all the texture in that. So even if we don't see anything there, I'm going to press Command 0 or Control 0 in Windows so I can see the entire image. And at any time, if I want to make a change, I could do it. Say, gee, maybe I want to change that railroad bridge. Maybe I went a little too crazy with the levels. I could always just click it in here. I don't even have to double click, just a single click on that symbol. That brings me back into the layers panel, and I can make whatever adjustment, make that bridge a little darker, and there it is. This tool is really terrific, isn't it? You can see how much trouble and fiddling around it saves by streamlining the process of masking and applying adjustments. So check out my full course, Become a Photoshop Expert in a Day by Mastering Layers, and I'll see you in the next video.